All right, welcome. Episode 4, DAO Talk. It is June 9th, 2022. You'll be listening to this on June 10th, most likely. This is DAO Talk, your one-stop shop for everything DAOs. I'm Tommy.
And I'm Frission GM.
Let's get into it. Frission, what's going on? We got some legislation coming out of the United States government. Has to do with some crypto policy. Let's break it down a little bit.
Yeah, super exciting. So there's a few reasons this proposed bill is exciting. First of all, it has very strong bipartisan support. So Senator Cynthia Lummis is a Republican, conservative from Wyoming, who's a longtime sort of crypto advocate. And then I think it's Kirsten Gillibrand is a Democrat, and I think she's from New York. And so, and then if you dig into Jake Chervinsky, who's a great resource for crypto policy in the U.S., he says it's not just that there's these two members of Congress that are sponsoring the bill that are on different sides of the aisle. There's deep potential bipartisan support both in the House and in the Senate, which I think is what bicameral means. And for this bill. So basically that means A, it has a strong chance of passing, but B, this is really signaling that there's been a lot of work behind the scenes with lobbying groups, crypto industry lobbying groups that I think Jake is a big part of, as well as just other industry advocates, Senate and House representative staffs, members to align on what is in this bill. And what's cool is it's mostly good stuff. So there's just really great, solid, regulatory pieces that we need to move forward as an industry. For example, it officially defines Bitcoin and ETH as commodities and says that they're under the CFTC's jurisdiction as opposed to the SEC, which is something that everyone kind of acts like is happening, but it's not 100% clear that's the case, or at least there's been some dispute. And then, it also specifies, last summer there was this bill, provision added to the to a tax bill that basically defined any actor in the sort of crypto value chain as a broker dealer, including wallets and exchanges, which would have put sort of a completely unrealistic level of reporting requirements on them. So this bill removes that definition and clarifies what is a broker and what isn't a broker in crypto. And so super exciting stuff. There is one piece that's actually specific to DAOs. And you can read about it in this tweet links to a summarized version of the report, which is probably a lot easier to consume than the full thing. And it basically says that DAOs need it for tax reasons. DAOs need to be properly incorporated in sort of the legacy meat space world of the U.S. legal system, and that they can use many potential options to do this. Which it's probably not a coincidence. Actually, there's been a couple of big reports put out by Paradigm, and which we link to, which you can share a link to, and also A16Z saying what are all of your legal options as a DAO. Those came out a couple weeks ago, and I was like, why are all these legal reports coming out? I think it's probably not unrelated to the timing of this bill, but basically a couple of great reports from Paradigm and A16Z that fully outline what all of your options are as a DAO for legal incorporation. Of course, it's controversial, right? Because DAOs are not inherently a, national based entity, aren't inherently regulated by the legal system. They're inherently extranational. And so this is kind of putting centralized requirements that can be exclusionary on DAOs. And so some people in the industry don't like it, which I think it is totally understandable. But it's also important to understand that some level of regulation is inevitable. It's hard to have, people in a given country earning their income through a DAO, having sort of some level of social responsibility for assets in a DAO, but then just absolutely no legal framework whatsoever for that. In some ways, the default, if there's no legal framework in place, is sort of everyone in the DAO is liable, which is not good either. So, debatable kind of if this is the right approach, but it appears to be at least somewhat thoughtful, which is awesome. So definitely worth checking out the kind of DAO portion of the bill as well.
Yeah, I think coming from, most of my acquaintances, not acquaintances, most of my friends and family who I talk to about, crypto are not super in the weeds. Like I think a lot of people listening to this are. So if you're listening to this and you're kind of like, like what does this mean? Particularly for DAOs, right? I think it's important to touch on like, hey, if you're in this space, and I think something Frission you talk about a lot, or something I've gotten from you, just like working with you is like, and with just people in the space who are worth talking about, especially you're seeing it now in the bear market, like these voices are starting to rise, these voices of reason and voices of authority are starting to rise on Twitter. Like regulation is good. I think when we were in that crazy frothy bull market the past like 6-ish months where like everyone was coming in and there's that huge NFT boom and it's like all scammy and stuff like that, right? I think those people were scared of regulation because it meant, oh shit, like, it was kind of like I don't even know what a proper analogy is. It was just like, it was just crazy. There was no rules. It was the Wild West. And I think long term, and I think anyone, who we respect or who you respect, if you talk to them about this, would say, yeah, regulation is good, right? Obviously, we're not just going to take whatever regulation is proposed as truth. Like there's going to be pushback on everything, especially because it's so new. But I, for one, welcome regulation. In regards to DAOs, it's a little bit of a different story, just because like at its core, the ideal is, hey, it, like you said, it's like a multinational thing. Like, right, we don't want to be regulated. We don't want to have to register with the United States government for like tax purposes. But at the end of the day, like if you want to exist in this country and in this market, right, you kind of have to play by the rules in some sense, right? And I think it's going to be, for me, like when I think about this, I just think, it's going to be really important to have voices at a high level. For instance, like A16Z, like Paradigm, that are lobbying the government and helping them really understand, what's happening. Because I think the biggest danger to this is regulation that is not proper, right? And that could pose a severe threat to the environment of like innovation and creativity around the DAO space. So it'll be interesting to see, I feel like a lot of this news, I see it and I read it and I'm just like, well, I feel like we're not going to see the results of it or see what the effects of it are for like 2 or 3 years, right? Because you have this regulation and you have this, these proposals or these new sets of rules, right? But something I've noticed within the DAO space is everything moves. It moves fast, but it also moves very slow in regards to seeing the actual effects it has on society. So it'll be interesting to see like how this plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, more than anything, it's a signal that there is productive activity taking place within the U.S. government as it pertains to crypto regulation, which is a good thing. We got to get along. We can subvert the nation state. That's good, but we also want to cooperate with them at the same time, so that everybody can win on some level. So yeah. Good stuff. But yeah, it's not just the U.S. government that is moving forward with DAO stuff this week. We got many hot projects and hot threads to cover.
Yeah. So enough talk on regulation and the government and the boring stuff.
Yeah. So
if you want to read more, if you want to read more, I mean, if you're listening to this,
I apologize.
Most people would
in
say
retrospect
this is boring.
for talking so much about that.
Yeah,
we gotta talk about juice boxes and like bananas wearing stud collars. What is that?
Let's
like
move
a
right into
studded
this.
choker on the banana.
I love
Nice.
JuiceBox. I love their creative team. So a project we talk about pretty often, right?
Oh, and smoking a joint as well. I didn't
notice
anyone.
that.
I didn't notice anyone smoking a joint in like the PR photos from like Kristen Gillibrand was not smoking a joint. Incredibly.
Something I want to touch on though is like, I love that this something I love about Web3 and like the DAO space is this like acceptance of like something like this, right? Like JuiceBox is like a major player in the space and they help raise a lot of fucking money, right? And I mean, there's so many instances. We'll talk about like Boys Club later, which is one of my favorite projects. And I was talking about the creative team on Twitter earlier this week. It's just like you're putting these really these artists and these creatives into the mainstream, and you're legitimizing them as, you know, people that contribute. Like, I feel like artists in the past have been like kind of like cornered off in society, and I think we're seeing, you know, kind of like a modern art renaissance in that, you know, especially with NFTs, like there's real money and these are real people and you need to pay attention to them, right? It's like the
Yeah.
intersection of art and finance, the meme, right? But like
Yeah. If you
something I
take a
really like
look at
about it.
if you take a look at what's happening here, which is jokeDAO trying to sort of like bootstrap their funding from the community, and also like the JuiceBox kind of mechanism for fundraising, like it's very legitimate stuff. If you look under the hood, there are a lot of very talented, very passionate people working on this. You know, it just comes out in the form of a um, banana with the choker collar, smoking a joint, looking at the Ethereum logo. Hell yeah, with headphones on as well, vibing. So yeah, this is cool. Like we've been covering we've been covering jokeDAO, not trying to like, you know, stand them too hard. But the thing is, like, they keep releasing like sick product for DAOs, and the way they're doing it is really unique. And so we're seeing them kind of take an additional step to try to secure funding here. So if you're interested in what they're building, which like as a reminder is kind of an on-chain primitive for community, like bottoms up, you know, decision making, organizing, road mapping, feel free to jump in to their JuiceBox fundraiser and help them bootstrap the funding they need to keep building.
Yeah, you want to give a quick little, like, maybe minute long explanation on what JuiceBox is? I know you touched on it a little bit, but I think for people listening, right, who are not looking at, and they just think of a banana smoking a joint, right? What is JuiceBox actually enabling these projects to do?
Yeah, I need to actually dig deeper into JuiceBox. Like, I'm not super deep on their mechanism. I know that they were like, I first heard about them because Constitution DAO, that group that like raised money to try to buy one of the physical copies of the Constitution, they used JuiceBox. I think the JuiceBox team was involved somehow. They're definitely using JuiceBox's mechanism to raise the funds. So it's some kind of like, you know, crowdfunding like protocol mechanism for DAOs.
Yeah,
Yeah, if you click on the page, it's like I don't know, it's kind of like a Kickstarter. You know, it's like you jokeDAO has a page, and then they're able to sort of like set funding goals, and then I assume there's some sort of like, you know, end point where stuff gets moved on chain and finalized, and then maybe you can set it up so that people receive, you know, tokens in return or something like that. Have to dig in deeper to figure out like exactly how everything works. But I know this team is working hard on these kind of like community bottom up funding mechanisms.
yeah, yeah. That was a good like general overview, right? It is basically like a community owned like treasury for projects that want to fund, or for people that want to fund, you know, really interesting projects in the space. Something I think it'll play really well into what we talk about later is a like trustware versus socialware, right? Which is an article we'll talk about later on in the project. But just remember this because we'll bring it up later on. But yeah, JuiceBox doing awesome stuff. We love that project. We love jokeDAO. We talk about them a lot. Also, we will talk about any project that is doing something amazing in the DAO space. It just happens to be that DAO keeps pumping, or jokeDAO keeps pumping out really awesome stuff. So moving on, something I mentioned earlier is Boys Club Crypto is decentralizing. A little overview, Boys Club. It is kind of ironic that we're talking about it, but I love them. So it's basically a no bro.
No,
The
bros,
bio is great.
dude. Their marketing and positioning and like comms are just god tier. Like
It's so
the
good.
vibe
You
that they
know,
put out is consistent across everything. It's all hilarious. Like it's so good.
something I'm like, the reason I love them so much too is, you know, a lot of people ask me about, you know, like, what is this podcast you're doing and what is a DAO? And I thought crypto was a scam, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of my female friends, I'm like, you know, I need to give them an introduction, or I would like to give them an introduction into the space. And this is a really, really, really like easy on ramp into the space, is because like their branding and the positioning is just perfect, right? They're not branding themselves, and this is what I think has to happen for us to onboard the next, you know, billion people, is projects like this where you're not positioning yourself as, the crypto bro project, right? There are 99 million other use cases besides the one, that we all know and love on, like, the traditional crypto Twitter. So I love this project, right?
Yeah,
Even
I
though
think
it's not
I think it's
necessarily for
cool
me.
too because like it's definitely counterposition to sort of your typical crypto Twitter project, but it is still crypto native. Like
Right.
sometimes you see these groups come in and they're like, this is crypto for X, crypto for Y. And then you realize like maybe those people don't actually know anything about crypto. But I think it couldn't be further from the case with Boys Club. Like the way they position themselves and like the groups conducted is like very crypto native while also providing like a totally different culture and vibe and angle. It's good stuff.
Yeah, and their podcast is
Too,
great too.
too dumb to DAO. That's so
Right?
good.
So
Man, I need to
I have
listen to
like,
this. I'm gonna go
it's
subscribe.
good. It's good. Like I have friends who, like I said, female friends. I don't mean that sounds so weird to be like my female friends. I have friends
You're
that are women.
you're making it clear to crypto Twitter that you do know women in
I
an
do.
achievement in its own
Many
right.
of them, real women. I they I suggest them this podcast, right? And I suggest them this project because a lot of times I talk to them and they have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about, right? And this is a great way to
Dude, too
on ramp them,
dumb to
like kind of
DAO
like
is
I
how I
said.
feel like at all times. That's just like
Exactly, right?
a good way to describe my general state of existence.
Exactly. But yeah, Boys Club is decentralizing. They announced it this week. Boys Club DAO. They were already somewhat functioning as a DAO. I think just is them making it official. And you can read their Medium posts about, how they got there, what they've achieved, what are the next steps, what is the point of, making this, officially a DAO. And yeah, it's a really smart, thoughtful way to go about doing this. Tyler, I know you have some thoughts on this.
Yeah, I like what they're doing here. It's like it's sort of this live, very current like group of people who understand crypto and understand other things while being like, okay, from first principles, like we have this community, we want it to be a DAO because we sort of agree with the overall goal of decentralization and autonomy. But how do we get there? And the approach they're taking is sort of like, okay, what are we doing today? And how can we create like sort of a minimum viable level of decentralization around that? So sort of like walk before you run type scenario. And so they basically have these existing working groups that they're trying to open up to make them more possible for other people to participate in on ramp into. They're deploying social signaling, social signal voting, to allow the community to start to like shape the direction that they're going and with decision making. So important kind of first steps on the DAO journey. They're not like rushing into deploying an official like governance token or doing on-chain voting. I think those are things that I imagine that they'll like figure out over time. But I personally, like, my view is it's kind of smart, especially if you already have like a fairly well functioning organization, to kind of like, walk before you run. So I like seeing what they're doing here and we'll be excited to continue to follow the project.
Yeah, awesome stuff from them. I'm excited to follow them, and I think a lot of Boys Club members will be at DAO NYC, and I think we're interviewing at least one. I know we're interviewing
Yeah,
Parker.
we're definitely interviewing Parker and she's speaking, but I bet there's at least a couple other folks
So
from Boys Club that are at least,
exactly.
active in the community that are going to be speaking.
Yeah. And for instance, like I'm assuming most of people who are listening to this are male. So, even though it's like a no bro club thing, right? It is a really good tool to use to help onboard your friends and show your friends what you're doing and why you love the space so much, especially if they are female, right? As I've already said. So, all right, moving on. We had a really interesting tweet. The tweet itself is good, but the replies were even better. And Tyler, you want to kind of give us an idea of what the tweet is, and then also, what conversations were sparked from this tweet?
Yeah, so I think the general idea is like, historically, a lot of DAOs have taken the approach of like, we kind of just put this governance token out there. Maybe we airdrop it to like a wide swath of people at once. Immediately, a lot of trading ensues, a lot of financialization ensues. Like, what are some other approaches we could take? And I think Anna Marie is specifically saying like, is there some way you could earn your way to, governance token, where it's not just like anyone and everyone could sort of like buy it or even get airdropped it, but you have to, participate and contribute and earn your way to having that voting power in the form of a token, which I think is a great thought and a great direction.
Yeah. Well, one of the best responses or threads I would say that we wanted to focus on is, this, Tyler, we've talked about it a lot off camera, right? Like this hybrid model of, having, and this kind of goes into the whole, why the SPT debate is important, right? Like having something that's, not openly traded on the market to control governance, but yeah, you want to expand a little bit on this, and what do you think the issues are with openly traded governance tokens? And well, I mean, we've talked enough about like optimism last week. We don't have to go into a whole background or like educational time to discuss it. I think people who are listening understand the function of tokens and the function of governance tokens as they are and why they're tradable. But I think it's important to touch on, why I think I agree with you in the sense of like they're probably all going to zero long term, right? And why that's bad, also why that would happen, and what are the solutions to that issue.
Yeah. Like governance tokens are going to zero is like my Twitter hot take, just trying to get my takes off, but like it's unfair and like and not like categorically true. What I would say is like, in general, I do believe that tokens can be used to govern DAOs in decentralized way. The existing meme or like popular format that was innovative 2 years ago, maybe isn't so innovative now, is like we deploy an ERC20 token and airdrop it to some people, and the only use case for this token is to like vote in the DAO. And I think it is like irrefutable what subsequently ensues when that happens. Basically, like, basically like most people don't actually have the capacity in or like incentive to actively participate in governance. So what happens is most of those tokens get tied up into the hands of like a few very large active voters. And so that's one thing that happens, which isn't ideal. And another thing that happens is, there's because most people don't want to participate in governance or like don't have the capacity to, the token just isn't very valuable. Like it's publicly traded, but like the only value to it is that you can participate in governance. No one wants to participate in governance. Like it's just going to become not very valuable. Like that's just how supply and demand and like math works. And the problem with that is that then other people can potentially buy up a lot of governance power for cheap, which if you are a protocol and you have a treasury and the tokens govern access to the treasury, which has other assets in it, there becomes like this sort of very clear play for people to like attack the protocol by buying a bunch of tokens for cheap and then just like liquidating the treasury. And I think we've seen that. And we're going to continue to see it, especially like as this bear market ensues. And so, yeah, we need to see. It's just like I just don't want to see people like, especially if you're like a high profile project with like smart people working on it, like who understand these things. Like, please don't just release a governance only ERC20 token and be like, cool, we're down now. Like, please don't do that. And so, so like, Optimism, they do have a governance only ERC20 token, but they also have this other very interesting approach, which is basically like trying to implement the whole soulbound NFT, which is like the marketing name for, that Vitalik and others help coin for non-transferable NFTs, where it's like, you, in addition to the governance power from the ERC20 token, there's also a mechanism to be like a citizen where you have a one person, one vote with an NFT that you can't give to anyone else. And so that like optimizes for a very different set of outcomes from a governance perspective, where, maybe you had to earn your way to getting that NFT. And, it's a much truer representation of like individual users who have like, power within the protocol. So I think there'll be other things that we need to continue to, innovate on to perfect or improve the voting model. But I think it's cool to see Optimism kind of taking a step in that direction.
But yeah, I think, I don't know how much of this is from you, Frission, but I think, you're definitely playing a role in like the conversation is shifting towards, you know, not debating. I don't think I've seen many debates on like pushing back against DAO or governance tokens are going to zero. I think the natural shift to the soulbound token debate and like, hey, how are we 100% sure this is actually non-transferable? Like there's been a lot of talks like what's just going to stop people from selling their keys, right? I think it's an acknowledgement subconsciously that there has to be a different solution than just governance tokens, right? And I mean, we can talk in future episodes too. I saw a project today, I think it's called Entropy, that has to do with solving the problem of people selling their keys and being able to issue soulbound tokens or explore that option, and proactively figure out that problem. So it'll be interesting to see like how this plays out. But I think you carrying the torch for that is making some waves, and I think people agree whether they want to admit it or not. I don't think a lot of. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I hardly think I'm the only one carrying the torch. But yeah, yeah, I think we'll see. We'll definitely see more experiments on this front, and I'm stoked for it.
Absolutely. You wanna? This one's from you. You want to tell me what this is?
Yeah, for sure. So this is just a thread. Someone really dug into data from Snapshot, which is like a social signal voting platform that is like super popular within DAOs. Most DAOs use it to get a sense from the community on whether they agree or disagree with a given proposal or action. So this individual Emre, who I think works at a VC firm, just dug into data from Snapshot, and yeah, some interesting takeaways. Like there's definitely a lot of growth happening in this sort of like DAO social signaling space. There's been massive growth, kind of as the headline says, in just like overall DAO like social signal vote activity, over an 8x in the number of DAOs, proposals, and votes. And then it's accelerating, right? So there's kind of this like exponential curve, which is good to see. And then there's been obviously a lot of memorable moments like Constitution DAO. And then he really digs deep and digs into like concentration of voting power among individual wallets, which is really interesting. What are the most active DAOs specifically? Are there there's like the 8th tweet and thread is like, are there certain DAOs where the voters are super loyal? You can see like there's voters who just like always come back to vote, and a really high number of them in some of these DAOs, which is pretty awesome. So like overall, it really shows like the growth and also diversity that is kind of occurring, where there's like way more than one type of DAO, and people are voting in many types of them, and it's just growing across the board, which I think is really great to see. More experimentation as we move forward as a space.
Yeah, I think it's just an awesome signal that I mean, our first episode we were like, it was kind of like the first signs of the bear market, right? And I think like it was something we talked about earlier, is like we have these voices rising to the top, and I saw something, I forget who tweeted it, but it's like this, I think it was Kane from Synthetics, who's like, it feels like crypto Twitter has gone a little bit quieter, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I just think the voices that are being amplified and the people that are talking, like we said in the beginning, like builders build in this market, and at the end of the day, like it's just removing all the noise and the bullshit in the space, and it's allowing projects to thrive, right? Like I remember how I felt 6 months ago. I feel way more calm and like motivated and energized by this space versus the 6 months ago where it was super frothy and all you had were like, I don't know if we said this on camera, but you just have these people who are not smart and they don't know what they're doing. They just got lucky in that market, and now they have a huge following and they're super rich, so they think they know what they're talking about. And I mean, there's Nothing that
It's
you can't
it's
really
very revealing, right? Once you come out the other end of a cycle, it's very revealing, like who's still there, and also who is right. Like
Yep.
I have a really now memory of tens of thousands of tweets from the last couple of years, and it's like it's very clear to me like people who were heavily discounted during the bull market who were like very, very right about the way that things played out. And now it's not really that they're getting validation, they're just still here. And a lot of the people who are like loud and wrong are just gone, right? Entire protocols that were loud and wrong are just gone. And so
Yeah.
I think it's very revealing, right? Around like who's really here to like build versus not.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that too, right? Like, inevitably, we're going to go through a cycle like that again. I have no idea what it's going to look like, right? But I think you need to remember that, as it's not going to make it easier to go through, but if you know you're right, and that's a whole different discussion, like knowing you're right. But if you feel convicted in what you're doing and the projects you're working on, and you're actively just trying to make things better, right? There's going to be loud voices telling you you're not, and you're going to feel, upset or sad about all that. But I think, um, on the long time horizon, right? Like you're just going to still be there. And that's the reward is, you're in this industry for the right reason and you're building for the right reasons. So it shouldn't really matter, you know, success is nice and like having your voice heard is nice, but also you can't find, your intrinsic value from that, right? You need to find your intrinsic value from like building and connecting and, being with everyone in the space. So that's why, I'm excited about DAO NYC. And, because I think, I've been energized by the fact that like, hey, this is like a bear market and shit's not great, especially from like mainstream media. But, don't tell us that. It doesn't feel that way, right? Like, I'm super excited and everyone's super pumped to be in there and talk. And the future hasn't seemed brighter. So I'm excited.
Yeah, DAO NYC, it's going to be a festival of builders. It's going to be
Hell yeah.
good.
Yeah. So two more things and we'll get to the meme of the week. I love this article from Orca Protocol. Frog Monkey, he is part of Bankless DAO. Jules, Orca, Chase Chapman, I think is part of Orca or kind of just like a collaborator, but basically trustware versus socialware. And I mean, we could talk about this for a whole other hour. I feel like, but I would suggest going and reading this, right? If there's anything you read in this whole thing, I would say go read this mirror post. I'm sure we'll link it on our Twitter as well. Tyler, you just want to give like as quick as you can on like what is socialware, what is trustware, and why it matters in DAOs.
Yeah, of course. So socialware is like what it sounds like. It's like people to people networks and coordination. Trustware is like maybe the original kind of like vision behind DAOs, which is like we're gonna build this software, using cryptography and incentive mechanisms that make it so that you can have code at the center that where like the trust lies, and then people are on the outside of it. So it's like technology enabled trust. And I think what we're learning in DAOs is that you really need both, right? Like just the trustware only is sort of like we're not ready for that, and or it's just like not really how people work together. There's like the people are in some ways I think always going to be at the heart of it. So this article is cool because it puts names on those two things, trustware and socialware. It talks about like what are they, what are examples of each, and then it's like we need a balance. So what does that look like? So I think it's a really good just take on kind of like where we are today in the industry.
Yeah, a really good analogy they made was, socialware is like you going and buying lemonade from some person and you giving them the money, right? There's a lot of not trust. There's a lot of social trust per se. There's not a lot of tech built into that, and then trustware is more a vending machine, right? You put your money in, it's built into the machine. Like this is how much you're paying, this is what you're getting, et cetera, right? And then this graph's really good because it kind of puts, or not kind of, it does put some popular tools within the DAO space, and it ranks them on a scale of what is more socialware, what is more trustware. Trustware, you have a on-chain voting, something that Tally does. A Moloch DAO knows is safe with people that are signing, and then you kind of get closer to socialware. Like you have like emoji polls in a Discord, and kind of just like people collectively talking about making decisions. I think the closer we can get to trustware and going back to that DAOs in theory, or a lot of it is based around code and tech, and we're not relying on humans, which are very fickle and change, and people make mistakes. We need to have that bigger inner circle, and then have the human decision space be on the outside that just kind of is like a peripheral of that code, that central organization. I think it's a great article, and it brings up a great point, and kind of helped me. I don't know about you, like helped me have some more solidified thoughts on, what are the problems we're dealing with, and how do we fix them, and where those problems land on the scale of trustware to socialware. I think like my favorite part is it kind of sums it up, I think, for this, if you want to read it all, but it's over time we expect DAOs to transition elements of socialware into trustware and expand the code at the center of their organization. But this will take time. Technological advancements, trial and error, and continued mistakes and iterations. We're grateful to be part of that process. And I think that kind of sums up my attitude on everything in the DAO space, is like, there's going to be a lot of mistakes, and there's going to be a lot of time and pains in building all this, but I'm just grateful to be a part of this process and to be working with people like you, Frission, and people at Tally and everyone else. So exciting stuff.
Hell yeah. We're all going to make it.
Cool.
I'm bringing it
Hell
back.
yeah.
Wag me. We're all going to make it, at least everyone who's like building with good intentions and genuinely enjoying the process. It's not as catchy of an acronym when you say that part, though.
Absolutely. Our last little bit of news is from, I think, is it founder or one of the main people at Llama? So
yeah, Shreyas, I think
he's
like a lead DAO Shepherd. He's a co-founder in DAO Shepherd. Mess this up. Shreyas, great Twitter follow, by the way. Like many good takes about a variety of topics. But I love this take. So, so we've been talking about governance tokens, some of the challenges there. If you have a token that's used for governance and you want people to be able to like enter and exit governance, then you need to be able to buy and sell it effectively, which is like DAO native token liquidity. It's a huge challenge, especially for like smaller DAOs. Their tokens just get like super liquid, very hard for people to enter and exit. It's expensive to maintain the liquidity. And then there's also treasury diversification. Like if your entire treasury is in your native token, we've talked about maybe some of the challenges with like infusing value and utility into native tokens, then it's hard to make your project sustainable over the long term. And so DAOs need to figure out how to get like other tokens, other funds, other sources of value, within their treasury besides just their native token. And so two huge problems in DAOs that like Shreyas's organization Llama tackles, and he's talking about how like nounDAO is actually a really interesting example of how to solve this problem in a very simple way. It's we've talked about nounDAO on here. It's like OG NFT DAO, super interesting project. Basically, like they auction off a noun I think every day for ETH, and then you need a noun to participate in governance. So it's like, okay, let's think about that, right? First of all, talking about like governance token liquidity, there is like an existing market for nouns as NFTs and like a desire to own them. It's not, I think saying that NFTs have like strong utility or fundamental value I think is a stretch, but I think they certainly have some level of utility beyond governance. Like nobody wants to own Uni besides for like governance or speculation. Like those are the only two reasons you would own Uni, and I would argue the speculation piece is actually like destructive from a governance perspective. There's plenty of speculation in nouns, but like I think there is an established like fundamental demand for these kind of like PFP NFTs, for the potential intellectual property, which in the case of nouns is like CCO, so you have kind of access to use that and profit from it. Like there is some level of fundamental demand for that, and there's also sort of like this existing market being made in the form of like trading nouns, OTC or on OpenSea. So like it has a different take on the like basically liquidity problem, token liquidity problem that seems to be working very well for them. And then also just like the mechanism fundamentally solves treasury diversification, because they do all of the auctions in ETH, and ETH is extremely liquid and also extremely like it has like the most fundamental value of any token in the space. So like very asymmetrically positioned from like a risk perspective to noun NFTs, which are like the other asset that nouns the nouns DAO can leverage for growth. And so anyway, like I agree. Like it's a very simple mechanism. It's like you're using an NFT for the governance token, and you sell them for ETH like on a continuous basis. But I think it's very effective. I'm sure it will have its own holes, but like this is a great example. It's like, you know, why I get that Nouns is an NFT project, but like why can't, you know, other types of DAOs like sell NFTs for funding on a regular cadence? Like why don't we see more forking of this mechanism as an alternative, right, to governance? So anyway, like love this take, and I think it's worth studying Nouns as like potential alternative mechanism and riffing on that from just an overall governance perspective.
Yeah, and I think there's a caveat because, and I think you touched on this, like you're not saying it's, you know, the perfect solution to, you know, alternatives to token-based voting, but like obviously, yeah, like there's still the risk of, you know, someone with enough capital coming in and just buying all the nouns, and you're kind of I think there's like a kind of a controversy right now, like POAP.eth is pretty much like buying every noun that comes out, really, just because they have the capital to do it, and no one really understands what their intentions are with that. But I mean, you still have the risk of someone coming in and doing that, but I think it's a much bigger hurdle than, you know, just sweeping all the tokens up on an exchange. So it'll be interesting to see, because like I think people view that as like a nouns thing, like only nouns can do that. But I think as it gets more popular and like as we have conversations like this, and nouns has positioned themselves as like, hey, like, this is not just our thing. Like we want this to be a thing for everyone, right? Like as a CCO. We'll see what happens, right? So pretty cool, interesting stuff. Let's move to the meme of the week. And it's kind of, you know, a meme and also really big news. So one of the first testnet, Ethereum testnet merged, and there was a live stream, and a lot of a lot of pretty interesting moments popped up from there. We'll just start with just the bankless meme, which isn't a video, but Tyler, I know you love what has happened. You love ETH.
This is just like
so
what
talk about it.
the live camera of the Geth team, which is like the most used execution client that's maintained by the Ethereum Foundation. Like this is like they kept sending pictures of their office, and they were like live streaming from that room also. It's just like so low key and so nerdy, and just like yeah, like like this is so funny. Like we're gonna talk about this some more, but like the Ethereum core protocol, like governance and development process, is something that like we're going to see more and more very official, very large organizations participate in. Like we saw Cloudflare is like deploying validators. You're having more and more sort of like Wall Street people, you know, just staying in touch with the governance process. And it's like absolutely hilarious to me. Like, you know, these people are like, okay, we're doing our like fundamental research. Like, let's hop on this live stream for the roptsen merge and see how it goes. And it's just like, this is the team. Like the cultural center of the call is like this room. It's just so good.
Vitalik, one of the richest people in crypto, and one of the founders of Ethereum, sounded like he literally had a potato for a mic.
Yeah, he sounded like an alien. This is like, yeah, Vitalik is the most important person in crypto by far.
And then this guy, I don't know who it is. Do you know who he is?
Yeah, his name is Jonathan Mann, I think. He does like a song every day, or he did for a really long time, and he's like friends with a lot of the Ethereum people and just involved in like the protocol and crypto culture and stuff. And so anyway, they were like having some problems where like basically people stopped mining on the roptsen chain, and it required the way that like basically the merge happens, it has to reach this metric called like total terminal difficulty, or TTD, and like there's some number you have to hit on that, and it's basically just like an aggregation of all the mining power that has been like deployed over time, and so people just like stop mining, and like it's like you know because it's like a test net that people don't really mine on, and so we just didn't hit terminal total difficulty for like another hour, I guess, compared to like what they expected. And so they were just like hanging out on the call, and like although like a lot of the hardcore traders on crypto Twitter were like on the call because they're all trying to trade the merge too, and like like they just like this Song a Day man was just playing songs for like a long time, just making up lyrics and stuff.
I love it.
So funny, dude.
I love it.
Anyway.
So interesting things happening with the merge. It is coming. But that has been episode 4 of DAO Talk. We are still here. We're still recording. We are not going anywhere. Also,
Tommy, hold on. I think you forgot.
What are we?
It's time for a ticket giveaway. Like
oh shit, I
DAO Talk
forgot.
is still small. You're still early, and being early comes with alpha. And the alpha that you're about to get is some free tickets to DAO NYC. So listen up. I made 10 free tickets with 100% discount, free Dizzle, free 99, and you didn't even have to steal it. So I'm going to give you the code right now, but I'm telling you there's 10 of them. And if I see one of you go and register 10 people for DAO NYC with this code all in a row, I'm going to be upset. Maybe you want to do 2. Maybe you want to bring like your partner. That's cool. All 10, maybe not. Leave some for the other friends. So 10 codes, maybe don't use all 10 of them, maybe 1 or 2. Dope. 10 uses of this code. It's DAO Talk 100, DAOTALK 100, DAO Talk 100, all caps,
caps or no?
No space, all caps, no space. I don't think the caps matter, but it's all caps, no space, DAO Talk 100, and we will see you at DAO NYC.
Yeah, if you're still listening to this at this long, then you deserve this.
Yeah, even if you do all 10, I won't be that mad. But I'll probably just like, I'll be giving you the side eye. For my laptop, I'll be like, for real though? For real? And you'd be like, oh, DAO NYC be bussin', no cap. I needed 10 tickets, And I'll be like, come on, man.
That's going to be the title of the episode. DAO NYC be bussin', no cap.
I actually think that's a good idea, for real. For real.
All right, fuck it, let's do it. All right, that's been episode 4.
You should put the like the perm on your head too.
Oh yeah, for sure. That'll be the thumbnail.
Or both of our heads. Both of our heads. We need the perm on both of our heads.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, that's been episode 4 DAO Talk. Told you we're not going anywhere. We're gonna be here as long as at least one DAO exists in the world. So.
That's like someone made a meme. Was like, at this rate, by 2041, there will only be 1 ETH left with the amount of ETH being burned after the merge. And then everyone was like, can't wait to be the only ETH holder. And then there was like jerking off to the burn memes. Anyway, so anyway, it'll just be us and like the one DAO, and it'll be
It's
great.
just the world is just one DAO. We will be talking about it, but we will see you next week. And then the week after that, we'll be live from New York and DAO NYC. So see ya. Peace.